Hi, this is Dhirendra. Welcome to the channel. Today we are going to discuss about 5 theories given by famous psychologist of the 20th century. One of the greatest and most influential psychologists, scientists of his times, Sigmund Freud. The man who was like a wizard when he started his work. Most of the famous scientists or psychologists during those times were influenced by his theories, most of which were controversial, most of which had huge issues of the society at that time. But because his studies were scientific in nature, the results were driven out of some processes led by him. That led to many people started believing in his theories and trying to verify the different theories put in by him. So let's try to understand what are those 5 theories which has impacted, debated, discussed even now after like 75 years of his death, almost 80 years since his death in 1939. So this man was born in 1856 in Austria. He started he was basically a doctor, a neurologist, and he later on started in 1886 his own private clinic wherein he wanted to understand the disordered minds in his terms. Freud has gone to France to study under Charcot, famous French scientist, wherein he was fascinated by the idea of hallucinations, and he comes back, and in 1886 he starts his own private clinic where he says that the major problems of neurology of mind, the major issues with mind is not due to the physical reasons or the reasons which are present in the body. It is because of the issues with the subconscious mind or the unconscious mind. So he started propagating different theories where he highlighted the emotions, the suppressed emotions, or those emotions which are not very on the face of humans, were the basic reasons why humans started having depressions, dementia, and other issues of mind. So one of the first theory which he gave was the interpretation of the dreams, where he said that the dreams are the result of our subconscious memories or subconscious desires and wishes. He believed that the dreams are a way of our subconscious mind to communicate with our conscious mind, and that could reveal repressed memories or emotions. So basically this theory had a huge impact on the understanding of human psyche by reading about dreams. As per him, the dreams had 2 components. One component was the factual part of it, whatever the patient remembered. The other component, secondary process, which is like interpreting and making sense of the dream. So when a patient tells a dream, he will tell about what all he saw, what all he felt in the dream. The second part of the researcher or the study was to analyze the dream by getting different cues, hints from the patients. For that he asked patients to have something called free association, wherein he was asking his patients to present the dream as they think by associating those events of the dream by the way the patient wants to let him know. So in this way their subconscious or unconscious mind will tell those things which they cannot tell directly. That was the logic of using dream study or interpreting dream in order to reach out to a conclusion about what could be the repressions, memories, what could be the bad feelings or feelings which normally humans don't want to come out, which don't want to pop up. But if given in a situation where they are not judged, where there is no judgment about how individual thinks, once that happens, then people or individuals are more open to what they think, and that leads to a different kind of study of the mind of that individual or the subject. So that was one theory. The second was the structure of the mind. One of the second theory which was given by him was the structure of the mind, wherein he says that there are 3 components of the mind. One is the conscious mind, the other is the unconscious mind. In between these 2 stages of mind or these 2 components of the mind is the pre-conscious mind. So the conscious mind is like whatever we are able to, whatever feelings, emotions, thoughts we have right now at this moment of time. The pre-conscious mind is like which is already stored in our memory at some subconscious level, but we can always retrieve it back as and when we want it. Maybe it can be the memory of a particular time and place, it can be the memory of a food, or it can be a bad memory which we which we had when we were young. Or the third and the last component which he said of the mind was that the unconscious mind. So according to him, these two components, the subconscious or the pre-conscious or the conscious mind, were a small chunk of our whole mind. The major component was the unconscious mind, which was the subconscious, which doesn't come out naturally. It will have to be probed, analyzed, thought over, discussed, and then if something comes out of the meaning, then we can understand why we are doing what we are doing. So that is one reason why his theory of mind is very important, wherein he says that the subconscious mind plays a major role in deciding what kind of personality we are. So a bad feeling at a young age, or some kind of feeling which we have forgotten because our mind has taken that process of defense mechanism to be able to survive the idea, the trauma which we had, or maybe the feeling which we had at that point of time. So this is one approach. Freud's theory of structure of mind is closely related to his idea of personality of individuals. He thought that personality is developed by three components. One is the id, the pleasure principle, according to him, which means that the mind always looks for those pleasures without any guilt or remorse or without any judgment. So that part of us, of our consciousness, which wants what it thinks is needed without any judgment of the society, morality, or anything. The third component, that is the superego, wherein the morality principle of the mind, the morality aspect, the truth of the value system of the mind, which is imbibed by the different teaching studies on situations which a human mind sees, he decides that okay, this is the right thing to be done. And the mid component is called the ego. The ego is the one which is trying to balance the conflict between the pleasure principle and the moral principle, that is the superego, and hence the ID and the superego are conflicting, and that is being balanced by the ego. So a person with a pleasure principle will always look out for different ways of having pleasures without giving a heed to the morality aspect of it. A person with the superego principle will have more suppressed feelings about the idea of the world, because he believes in those morality concepts without trying to balance it out. So according to Sigmund, ego is one important balancing factor for the way a human mind is. So somebody who is having a higher component of pleasure principle, he will be giving too much of weightage for the pleasure without actually taking care of the morality aspect of it. Someone who is into the totally morality principle of it, then he will be like forgetting to do things or which are needed to be active, to be competitive, to be having a balanced idea of ourselves. So the ego is that part of the mind that mediates between demands of the ID and the realities of the external world. It operates on the reality principle, seeking to satisfy the ID's desire, the id's desire, in a way that is socially acceptable and does not result in negative consequences. The superego is that part of the mind that represents our internalized sense of morality and values. It is the part of the mind that tells us what is right and what is wrong, and it is formed through socialization, cultural influences. The superego is responsible for the feelings of the guilt and shame when we violate our moral standards. The other fifth principle given by Freud was the defense mechanism, which according to him means that our mind develops defense mechanisms to be able to cope up with the realities of the world, to understand the complexities of the principle of pleasure and the morality principle. So this helps us to be able to act normally, this helps us to behave normally without having idea of depression, the idea of bad feeling about ourselves, the idea of bad feeling about the world. So it can mean that various defense mechanisms are used to protect ourselves from anxiety and discomfort. So what are those defense mechanisms? What are those mechanisms which our mind uses in order to help ourselves be okay with something which is not in our favor? Repression is one thing. Like repression is what is like our mind deliberately avoids remembering those past bad feelings about which we might have due to maybe in the young age, or maybe when we were in our classes, or maybe in our education system, or maybe whenever at time where we feel. So it is like it involves pushing away thoughts. What it does is it pushes away thoughts, memories or emotions that are too threatening or uncomfortable for us. We don't want to kind of have that idea of like, we have lost someone, or suppose that we have met with some bad feeling which we still remember while we were a kid. So repression is one mechanism through which our mind avoids such thoughts, feelings and ideas. Denial is like our mind makes us understand that this is not the reality. It tries to lie to itself about the reality. Like suppose somebody who is having a terminal illness, he or she won't want to believe that. So denial is one part of the ways our mind helps us to cope up with the problem. The third aspect is the projection. The projection involves attributing our own thought, feelings, impulses to someone else. Like suppose we are jealous of someone. Like suppose you are jealous of your boyfriend. Then you will start accusing him for his bad habits. So that will be like you are projecting your own emotions to somebody else's personality and trying to justify your emotions. So that is one part. Rationalization is the other defense mechanism which our mind uses in order to be moving away from those bad feelings about ourselves, which is like justifying a behavior or emotion by creating a false or less threatening explanation. For example, a person who has failed an exam may try to rationalize it by saying that the teacher was against him because he has a bad mouthed that teacher. Sublimation is that using your fears and involves justifying a behavior or redirecting your emotion or impulse into. So what is that? So sublimation involves redirecting an emotion or impulse into a more socially acceptable behavior. So a person who has aggressive impulses might channelize his energy into something like, say, into gym or into sports, and can become a better or a good sports person or individual. Regression. It involves reverting to an earlier stage of development or behavior in response to stress or anxiety. For example, an adult might start chewing his nails whenever there is a tense situation, whenever there is a difficult situation. One of the famous personalities who used to do that was Sachin Tendulkar. When he was in the playground, he used to often chew his nail whenever he was in stress. So that basically his mind was following the defense mechanism to cope up with the anxiety of that situation. The other is intellectualization, is that component wherein using excessive rationalization techniques or abstraction to distance oneself away from the emotion or the situation. For example, like suppose somebody has died, then you start focusing too much on the basic details of the process of carrying out the whole cremation or the whole final journey process. So these defense mechanisms are often used by our mind to cope up with the situation or the loss or whatever, the mental problem at that point of time. One of the last theory was of Oedipus complex by Freud. According to him, young male experience unconscious desire or attraction, sexual desire actually, towards their parent of the opposite sex. As per him, the children between 3 and 6 years of age, they have this attraction towards their parent of opposite sex. So a boy will have sexual attraction towards their mother. A girl would have sexual attraction towards their father. Again, this has been very controversial and very debated topic in the history of psychology. But as per him, the desire leads to a feeling of jealousy, hostility towards the same-sex parent, creating a sense of competition to win the affection of the parent, or obviously the opposite sex parent. This theory has been widely debated, but it continues to influence the understanding of the childhood development. And so basically this why the name Oedipus complex. There was a famous Greek mythology story wherein Oedipus, the young prince, was born to the parents, wherein the prophetess gave the news to the parent that this child is going to kill his parent and will marry his own mother. As in the mythology would have it, his parents took that child to the jungle, left it there. Another king takes back that child, brings it to the palace, and then he starts taking care of the child. When the child is adult, he comes to know about the story and the prophecy. Thinking that his caretaker parents were his original biological parents, he moves away and was on the path towards some other city, and on the path he killed his biological father because of some fight between them. And on the way he reaches to the kingdom where he originally was born. Then he solves a problem of Sphinx, and after that the mythology moves in such a way wherein he finally marries his mother. They have 4 children. After that, somebody tells the original story. When he comes to know about it, his mother hangs herself and he gouges his eyes out. So the story is like created in such a manner wherein it leads to the final prophecy being truth, that the Oedipus, the boy, finally ended up killing his own father, marrying his own mother, and reflects the power of the destiny as per the Greek mythology. So right now, after so far we discussed various theories given by Freud, which had like the interpretation of the dream, which had the second principle was of the structure of the mind, wherein ID, ego and superego were discussed. The third topic of discussion was on the free association, that our patients or our minds have dreams, and those dreams are connected to our unconscious mind, and once those unconscious feelings, thoughts are attached to those dreams, by asking the patient to have different associations of the dream, then there may be some solution to the problem a patient is suffering from. The fourth point which we discussed was the defense mechanisms. The defense mechanisms are used by our own mind in order to cope up with the situation or the mental issue, or to avoid any bad feeling or ill feeling. The last point which we discussed was the Oedipus complex proposed by Sigmund Freud, which he said mainly develops in young children between 3 and 6 years of age, wherein they have a sexual desire or attraction towards their own parents of opposite sex, and hence the controversy. So hope this whole video has been informative, helpful for you to understand what were the major theories proposed by Sigmund Freud during his lifetime. And please remember, he continues to be one of the most dominating psychologists even today after 80 years of his death. Thanks for your time and patience. Hope it has been useful. Thank you.